Good afternoon, everybody, and you're all very welcome to this webinar on struggling with sleep. What can I do with Midwest AREIS and in partnership with Mental Health Ireland? So we're going to have a great discussion today on all things sleep and practical things we can do to help manage our sleep. So my name is Cillian, and I am the Peer Education Training and Development Officer with Midwest AREIS. And yeah, so today I think I'm joined by really great panelists who are going to share their own experiences and their own knowledge around sleep. And again, it's going to be an open discussion. And again, there's going to be great interaction from the people joining the webinar today. So before we begin, I suppose I'll just share a little bit about Midwest AREIS, who we are and what we do. If this is your first time being at a webinar, so we are the recovery education service based in the Midwest, which is Clare, Limerick and North Tipperary. So we currently run online and face-to-face workshops on mental health and well-being. And yeah, it's just we are kind of running through our schedule at the moment. So I'll have more information on all of our events towards the latter end of the webinar. So if you're interested in more events or workshops, I'll have all that information towards the end. Just a little bit about on housekeeping. So the format of today's webinar is 1 hour. So at the bottom of your screen, if you're on a tablet or a laptop or a phone, there's a Q&A button at the very end. So if you even want to preload some questions that you want to ask, we'll get to them throughout the webinar, and hopefully we'll be able to answer the best we can from myself or even from the panelists as well. This webinar is also recorded, so it will be uploaded onto our Midwest AREIS YouTube channel and also as a podcast link as well on Anchor FM, and it's available on Spotify and all good podcasting streaming services. So other than that, we'll finish with a guided meditation towards the end as well. And hopefully it can bring you back to the present moment, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. It'll only be a couple of minutes as well. So I think I've covered everything. So if anyone, or if the panelists even, want to turn on their cameras and say hello and just introduce yourselves as well. So I am joined by Mike, Miffy and John. So yeah, all good. If you want to, Mike, might come to yourself just to do an introduction for yourself. That's all right.
Perfect. Thanks, Cillian. Yeah, my name is Mike O'Neill. I'm the manager with Midwest AREIS, which is, as Cillian said, the recovery education service here. And I'm really interested in this topic because I'm struggling with sleep at the moment. So, yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Mike. It's great to have you here. Miffy, you might come to yourself, if that's okay. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Cillian. My name is Miffy, and I'm one of the development officers with Mental Health Ireland. So I'm in Sligo and Leitrim. My background is in stress management and mindfulness. Actually, I've been teaching mindfulness for a couple of decades now. And so I suppose, my input is around the meditation, the mindfulness, and how that can support us with sleep. But yeah, so that's me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Miffy. And it's great to have you here as well. John, we might come to yourself there. That's all right.
Yeah. Hi, how are you? My name is John O'Connor. I'm the Therapeutic and Recreational Coordinator in the Acute Psychiatric Unit in Ennis. And I suppose as part of our therapeutic program here, we run some self-care groups. One of those will be around sleep and sleep hygiene. And I suppose I during the session, I suppose I'd be hoping to, add to the group, maybe feedback from service users here in the acute unit. People who, I suppose, lived experience around, poor sleep and experiencing poor sleep, I suppose, and maybe tips that they would have suggested around how what might have helped them in enhancing their sleep pattern.
Brilliant. Great stuff, John. That's great to get your experience as well, and hopefully someone can take away some knowledge as well towards the questions that we asked throughout. So yeah, I suppose we'll get going on the questions, if that's all right with everyone. Again, if anyone wants, if everyone wants to put questions in the Q&A button, again, preload them and we'll get to them throughout as well. So I'm just going to throw out the first question, quite broad for the webinar. So the question is, why is sleep important for our well-being? And Miffy, I might start with yourself, if that's all right. Thanks a million.
Okay, cheers. Yeah. Well, I suppose, you know, while we sleep, there's a lot of restoration going on a physical level. You know, there's a sort of a resting the body in terms of the muscles and all of that, and your cellular kind of, you know, restoration occurs. And when we go into sleep, you know, our brain, our mind goes into a different sort of wavelength, if you like. And so in our dream state, we're processing information. So things that we've learned, things that we've done, things that we've experienced during the day is then processed and sort of, you know, it's a bit like downloading stuff, you know, on your computer, you know. And so there's a lot of processing that occurs during sleep, not least relaxation, you know, that if you have a deep sleep, that your body gets a chance to fully relax. And you know, that includes all of the systems in the body. So like, it's really vital that we get enough sleep and that we get enough deep, restful sleep, you know. And that's when, you know, we've all hopefully had that experience of waking up from a really good sleep and how refreshed you feel and how it's great, you know, it's like resetting, isn't it? So yeah, I think sleep is absolutely up there in one of the most important pieces to our wellness in general, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, in every which way. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Miffy. Does anyone want to come in on that, just on Miffy or even on the question itself? Why is sleep important for our well-being? Mike, maybe?
Yeah, I think just on a basic level, and I'm going to speak for me, I suppose, throughout this webinar, because again, it's even about functionality, where I love what Miffy said about the repair function and that what's happening in the body. And but for me, it's about even with broken sleep for so long and that ongoing, I suppose, a chronic fatigue, for the want of a better phrase, that I'm giving myself is, I am now limited in my ability to engage in certain tasks. So even right now, I plan my working week here, even so as I know that all the important stuff that I need to get done, that where I have brain power, I definitely have it early in the morning, but come 3 o'clock on in the evening, I actually have to plan each working day where I need less brain power and it's just functional tasks. So, and that's a response to not having. So even to have that ability, as Miffy correctly said, that if we're rested and we feel that way rested, well then I should be performing throughout the day and also then be functional when I get home, that like I can say hello and be mindful, and if there's tasks around the house and other stuff. But whereas I find the fizz has gone out of me. So it's actually a chore now to do certain tasks on a weekday when I'm working. So generally it's just sit and relax. So it is important. So the better. So I'm really interested to hear about what people would recommend and can do here to try and manage that. So yes, is it important on the very basic of daily living? It's important. Yeah. Thanks, Cillian.
Great. Thanks, Mike. That's brilliant. And John, we might come to yourself then, just to add to that, or even to the question itself, why is sleep important for well-being? Thanks,
yeah, I mean, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's really a lot of what the lads were saying there around, you know, your daily functioning. And I suppose the feedback I would have got from service users here is that, you know, achieving a healthier, you know, a good sleep pattern really, you know, boosts their energy levels. It just, I suppose, allows them to feel that they can focus better, you know, on tasks during the day, that they've better sense of concentration, that they're able to, you know, that they have more kind of motivation, you know, to achieve the things that they wanted to do on that day. And in that sense, you know, their daily functioning, their overall sense of daily functioning improves, and you know that can have a huge, you know, positive impact on a person's, you know, self-esteem and self-confidence as well. You know, that they're that they feel energized, that they're able to, you know, achieve, you know, maybe goals that they'd set out in their day, you know, and that, you know, that they feel that they have the energy and the focus to do so. And even as, you know, as Mike was saying, in the evening time, for many people, you know, they go to work, but they come home, then there might be kids, there might be homework, you know, so nearly another day's work starts, you know, when you get home, you know. So, you know, if you can, I suppose, you know, achieve, I suppose, a sleep pattern, you know, that is good, that is satisfactory, you know, to you, to help your, you know, to support your energy during the day. It just allows you to kind of, you know, to perform tasks with more confidence, and with more energy. And even, you know, people reported that, you know, that they were more able to kind of exercise as well, you know, during the day, if they felt that they were rested, you know, that they were more able to, maybe in the evening time there, just, you know, maybe go for a walk or go for a jog or go for, you know, or whatever it might be, that they had more kind of motivation and desire to kind of get out and exercise, which is a really important, you know, part of establishing a healthy sleep pattern in the first place, you know.
Yeah, that's really good, John. I think, yeah, you know, even it's that ripple effects that can affect other things like exercise, if you're well rested, and eating well or nutritionally as well. So there's so many different factors as well that's involved. So that's really, really good. And does anyone else want to come in on that, on the, I suppose, the ripple effect that sleep can have and the importance of it? Miffy, I think you're nodding your head there.
Yeah. I'm reminded of the acronym MEDS, MEDS. So MEDS stands for meditation, exercise, diet, and sleep. And there being 4 pillars to our wellness, right? And when we have a nice healthy balance with all of those things, we tend to be better, but they also influence one another. And I'm hearing what John is saying there about exercise, and exercise. It's that cycle of, if you're well rested, you feel more motivated to exercise, but if you exercise, you sleep better, right? So sometimes we have to start introducing maybe small amounts of exercise into our day, even when we don't feel like it, right? In order to sort of, you know, we actually generate energy by using energy. It's that kind of funny irony, isn't it? So by doing a bit of exercise, and it doesn't have to be anything major or big sporty type, you know, a bit of stretching even, bit of yoga or a bit of walking or a bit of gardening or something physical that we move the body. And that can then help us to sleep better. And as a consequence, then we're able to have a bit more motivation for exercise, you know, the next day. And so it builds. And so it's by building that. But, you know, meditation and diet are also important in there. And I know that, you know, sort of, and we mentioned this before we came live, you know, about stimulants and you know, sort of the fact that in a lot of the everyday common diet these days is caffeine features, right? So whether it's coffee, because your coffee is so accessible now, so we all tend to drink far more coffee than we ever used to, because it's just there and it's part of our culture. And then there is also the phenomenon of, you know, I won't use the names of the products, but the caffeinated drinks that are so very common, and we see our children, you know, are engaging in drinking with them from a very early age too. So caffeinated soft drinks are another scourge, I would say, in terms of sleep hygiene for people. And maybe we don't realize, you know, and even sugar is a stimulant as well. So all of these things that stimulate and mimic the stress response, actually, you know, they raise the heart rate and the respiratory rate and blood pressure and so on. So those are all features with stress as well, stress response. So if you are stressed and you're drinking more coffee to keep awake because you're feeling tired and so on, you're exacerbating the whole thing. So, you know, I think just to be aware of, and of course not forgetting meditation being in there as an important feature as well for, you know, and again, none of these things in isolation are the answer. It's a holistic approach is my view anyway.
That's great, Miffy, and I really like the acronym MEDS. Like, it's really good because it makes sense, you know. Just going to break it down for people as well. Mike, were you going to come in there? Sorry, I thought you were on mute there. You're on mute there, Mike. Sorry. Thanks a minute.
Yeah, thanks, Cillian. And I suppose I'm just looking at questions that are popping in there, and some of those are resonating with me. Well, I think what Miffy is saying are brilliant responses, but for me, it took me a long time to figure out, why am I not sleeping? And that's the bit. So if you can unlock that and identify the reason why, and there's a couple of things after popping in here. You know, is age a factor? And again, I'm getting older. That's something I've been considering. Is it just normal? There's somebody with medication has come in there saying that they feel sluggish. You know, and sometimes if you're on antidepressants, that can happen. You can feel sluggish with that. I often wake at after 4 or 5 hours, and that's me. If I wake at 2:30 in the morning, I cannot go back to sleep. And someone mentioned trauma, and I put the reason down to that is trauma for me and my experiences. And so so when I was in situations as a child and as an adult that I was experiencing traumas, I had a learned behavior from childhood. So before I went in a door, what's going to happen? What are all the possibilities? What are all the outcomes? What do I need to do? How will I stay safe? How will I manage this? So it's all that busyness. And I would describe in work, and one of the benefits of having a brain like a pinball machine that just goes bing, 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 bing. In this job here, it's fantastic because there's project management and there's so many balls in the air at the one time, I'm able to manage it. But that's a benefit of having a brain like that, because when I wake at 2:30 in the morning, that's where my brain goes. I go into work and other stuff, but it's a learned behavior from the past. It's a trauma response, trying to preempt all of the possibilities. If this happens, these are the next steps. This is the next step. This is the next step. And that's exhausting. My brain still works like that as an adult. So when I wake at 2:30 in the morning, my brain, that's what it does. And I've done all of those things. Like Miffy has said, mindfulness, medication, walk on the beach, walk in the woods, doing the gardening. This morning, I was awake early. I drive into work early, and I do it every morning. I go for a walk because I'd rather be walking than sitting in traffic. So I beat the traffic. But I'm getting in those walks every morning, but there's still that tiredness. So, and again, I suppose, so looking at other stuff then, so right now for the last year and a bit, I've been in counselling and processing a lot of stuff there. And so I discussed recently with my counsellor, again, my sleep pattern. She said, go to your doctor. I went to my doctor and I discussed it with my doctor, and are my bloods okay? Is there an underlying cause? And so the doctor said, absolutely not. And I says, look, I've tried everything. I've given up the coffee. I've done all of the things that we're supposed to do. None of them work because I have learned behavior in here. So how do I change the behavior? And that's a massive challenge for me. You know, so what the doctor did give me, we discussed the melatonin, which we mentioned earlier on, even before we came on. And I tried that before. That didn't work, had no effect. She said, I'm not giving you sleeping tablets because they're highly addictive. You know, so again, we discussed alternative medications. And so she's given me a medication that I am actually benefiting from at the moment. And it's an old antidepressant called mirtazapine. And in a low dose, it can help with sleep. Now, while I say I'm far from there yet, as in managing sleep, but it has made a remarkable recovery. And as the doctor said, try it for a couple of weeks. If you get into a pattern, this one is not like SSRI medication where you can actually come off it. So you can start on this particular drug. It's a very old-fashioned psychiatric drug, and so it's around a long time, but in a low dose. They use it to manage anxiety and manage sleep. So I'm thinking, well, it's not anxiety as such, but it's that busyness, so as to shut down that and slow it down. And then if I can get back into a pattern of sleep, she said you can come off it and go on it again to try, because I've done everything. I mean, I work in the recovery business, and so I'm not going to sit here and sound like a fraud and say, you do this, go for a walk in the woods to change your life, because it's not working for me, but so it is, as Miffy said, and John, it's find what will work, and it's not one thing, so I've shared a lot, but it's kind of, and it's a response to some of those questions, because I think this is a fascinating subject. So I think behind all the management pieces, if you can identify the reason, you're halfway there. And as the doctor said to me, while you're going to counseling, your brain will be processing that night. And so I would recommend that if you do get into a good sleep pattern, you've exhausted and finished that process, then, come off medication too, if you decide to stay on it. So I suppose while I'm bringing this in, there's lots of alternatives, and it's to find out what works best. So I better stop.
Brilliant.
And keep.
Thanks, Mike. No, you're grand. That's all good, because you covered a lot of the questions that are coming in anyway on the Q&A. But just before I go to some of the questions, because I think they're very relevant to what you were saying anyway, does anyone want to come in before I go to the question, John or Miffy? Or are we happy enough to kind of tackle some of the questions?
Yeah.
Happy enough? Yeah. Questions? You go for it? Yeah, grand job. Perfect. So I suppose there's one here at the top, and it's, I often wake after 4 to 5 hours of sleep and can be awake for 1 to 2 hours. I read for a while and will eventually get some sleep before I get up. I'm often tired in the afternoon. I would like to get a more continual sleep at night time. So does anyone any kind of practical things, or I know Mike kind of covered a good bit. So Miffy or John, do you want to come in on that one maybe? Either, whoever wants to go. Yeah, John. Thanks, John.
Yeah, well, I think it's it's such a unique thing for each individual, each person. As to what to do, to help manage your sleep pattern. It's really common what that person is suggesting there about waking up in the middle of the night, finding it hard to maybe get back to sleep, and maybe then not having that adequate amount of energy during the day. What I would say is just maybe when you wake up in the middle of the night, just taking a note of maybe how you're feeling, your emotions, your thoughts, the kind of thoughts that you're experiencing, what maybe you're trying in that moment, maybe to help, if it is thoughts, maybe to manage those thoughts, and to help you, I suppose, achieve a sense of calm, so that you feel that actually you're able to get back to sleep. And it's really it's trial and error. It's trying different things. For for some people, I know we talk about meditation, but it mightn't be for everyone. There might be other ways that that we can maybe distract our mind in that moment. I know I'm not even sure if it is the person's thoughts, that are keeping them awake, or it could be, could be anxiety or stressors in day-to-day life that could be contributing to it. But it's kind of taking note of and I suppose we talk about kind of journaling your thoughts, or or keeping a kind of a sleep diary around that, because if it is a kind of continuous pattern, then and it's having an effect on your ability to kind of your energy during the day, well, then maybe it's something that we need to kind of maybe really look at and address. And I'm not saying you're not doing that, you know, I'm sure you are trying efforts, but I suppose it's the fact that you're here today and you're on this webinar. I suppose maybe you're looking for maybe suggestions to help in that moment. I think just from hearing, say, people's past experiences, like we say, of people in the acute unit, you know, what seems to be, you know, a precipitating factor for people waking up in the middle of the night is that maybe that general feeling of stress or anxiety during the day that maybe they're not fully addressing in their I suppose like pre-bed routine, we'll say, or, you know, those couple of hours before, you know, we're getting ready, you know, to go to bed. You know, what are we doing, you know, maybe to help manage our thoughts, you know, and manage any worries or stressors that we're having, because you know, something that's very common is people are kind of maybe lying in bed, you know, thinking about things and worrying about tomorrow, and, you know, oh, I should have got that done today, or, you know, why didn't I do this, or, you know. And when you're lying there in bed, like at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, there's very little you can do at that time to affect what's going to happen tomorrow or what happened that day, you know. So it's getting into, I suppose, a headspace where you can try and let things go, you know, let your thoughts go and look forward to tomorrow, you know. And there's different ways of doing that, you know. Meditation can be helpful, but, you know, for others it mightn't be. You know, maybe other distraction techniques, maybe reading, maybe even watching some television, maybe listening to the radio, doing a bit of mindful coloring or something, just to maybe distract the mind away from your thoughts, you know, can be beneficial. And really, for me, it's all about managing your nighttime routine and feeling more relaxed in your mind and in your headspace before going to sleep, and that can help you develop a kind of a healthier relationship, you know, with your sleep and your sleep pattern. And
That's really
you know,
good.
it can help you, you know, potentially can support you in sleeping longer in the night and not waking up during the night.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant, John. There's lots in that as well. Miffy, yeah, that's perfect. I'll come to yourself.
Yeah,
Perfect. Yeah.
Just thinking about, you know, the sort of the stress insomnia cycle that we can get on that loop, you know, because when we're experiencing stress, and John was talking about it there, you know, how, and the stress response is a very physical thing. The physiology of stress is designed for us to be in a state of action stations, right? It's the fire alarm of the body, you know. And so it keeps us on high alert. So if we are experiencing stress, and that doesn't mean necessarily that it's because we're extremely busy. You know, there was a time when we associated stress with a very busy lifestyle, but the stress response is instigated when we're experiencing any kind of feeling of pressure or threat or fear, right? So it can be because of a trauma response. It can be because of you know, anxiety. It can be because of all sorts of reasons that we have the stress response. And so we have, you know, cortisol and adrenaline in our system, which is keeping us in high alert. And if that's not addressed, and if that's not reduced, it's in the system. So when we wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, or whatever hour it is, and bing, we've got so much of the stress hormones in our system that are not conducive to sleep, right? So, and the minute we start to think, we might even just think, oh God, here we go. I've just woken up and it's the middle of the night and I know I'm not going to get back to sleep. Well, that in itself is a stressful thought, right? And that in itself is going to actually bring you into more of an alert and heightened state, which is going to stop you from sleeping. The opposite to the stress response is the rest and digest response, which is where the body gets soothed and into that feeling of safety. Where, you know, you can relax, and where the heart rate does slow down and the breathing rate does slow down. And there are things that we can do to do that. And I think, you know, coming from the perspective, and I saw one of the questions was there about mindfulness and how it's hard to come into the body for some people. And I absolutely get that. And in mindfulness, we talk about coming into the body. And for some, you know, we are disassociated from our body because of things that have happened to us, or even just because the sensations of anxiety and stress are really visceral and really uncomfortable, right? So I think we have to be mindful of there being different ways to soothe the nervous system. And that can be distraction, or it can be coming into the body. But with any kind of meditative practice or mindful or relaxation practice, we need to be practicing it during the day. We need to be making it a part of our daily routine, like brushing our teeth. It doesn't have to be big, long sessions of it, but just short increments of time where we're present and where we're soothing that central nervous system and the autonomic nervous system, the bit that deals with our heart rate and our breathing rate and the stress response. And what that does is then it equips us so that if we do, well, to start with, it soothes us so we're much more likely to have a good night's sleep and not wake up in the middle of the night. But if we do wake up in the middle of the night, we're much better equipped to access that rest and digest response than to go off on that, oh, here I am. And what I said at the beginning about the insomnia stress loop, where we actually we're not sleeping because we're stressed. And then because we get stressed about not sleeping, and so this vicious cycle. So I think we need to be bringing relaxation and soothing the nervous system as part of our daily maintenance, and that includes reducing stimulants in our diet and in our environment. So that's the phones, the tablets, the telly, the social media, the stuff that you know gets in on us and distracts us. So any kind of stimulants like that, we need to address exercise, because one of the things that exercise does is it also helps to negate the buildup of nervous energy in the body, so, and tension in the body. So we can exercise that out of our, you know, of our body. And so that's the exercise and the diet, so to speak. So having a you know, as clean a diet as possible, and bringing the meditation into our daily practice so that we can gradually get used to coming into the body. Because I know that, you know, it's not easy, and being with uncomfortable feelings in our body is uncomfortable, and so we avoid it. But we can use distraction instead, as a, you know, listening to gentle music or white noise or something soothing, waves lapping, whatever floats your boat, instead of coming into the body. So you're accessing something through your senses. So you're using your hearing and your visual cortex to access something, but you're not necessarily coming fully into the body if that's traumatic for you. But in time, even with the trauma response, it's about being able to get comfortable with your body and get comfortable. And that's a process, and it's not something you necessarily do on your own either. You need a good practitioner to be able to work with you on that. So just mindful of some of the questions in there relate to trauma and so on. And so it's about just being mindful that ultimately coming into the body is the ideal. But that you need support with that. So I know that was long-winded. Sorry.
No, it's great. There was lots in that, Miffy. It's brilliant. But I think it comes back to what you're saying about the daily maintenance being pre-planned of what you're doing during the day to help the nighttime routine as well. So it's kind of all interlinked as well. So that's what I kind of took from that as well. And that's brilliant. And there is a lot of questions coming in. So I know I kind of want to.
I suppose I'll just jump in again, because again, I've always struggled with bad sleeping patterns, and again, and I suppose it's kind of, well, as Miffy was saying, and brilliant, and to be able to name all that stuff, and I'm saying, yeah, I do that, I've done that, I've tried that, I've done this and that. So, well, maybe they've got me to where I'm functioning at this level, and I'm kind of saying, well, maybe if I never done any of those things, or like getting the what's wrong, how bad would I be now? You know, and it's kind of like where I'm not there. Hopefully, as I said, the medication piece may get me there. And I suppose the piece it just reminded me, I had this conversation around poor sleep, and this was a counselor again in a session 20 years ago. And I was saying, I just can't sleep. I'm so frustrated. So she says, what do you do when you wake up at 2:30 in the morning? And I said, I start giving out to myself. Here we go again. Jesus, oh, this is terrible. Blah, blah, blah. You know, why can't you just sleep? And having this angry conversation with myself. And she said to me, now, if you were in a house and you had a small baby and it woke up crying at 2:30 in the morning, what would you do? And I said, well, I get up, I check, does it need a nappy change? Is it hungry? Does it need a bottle? I'd comfort it, settle it down, and it'll go back to sleep. And she says, why aren't you doing it for yourself? So it's that self-compassion piece that we all struggle with, you know, whereas the default setting is, oh, here we go again, bang, you know, rather than saying, no, I am okay, I am safe. Right in this moment, I'm safe. So when we look at those questions, there's a common thread there of trauma. So even just to reassure yourself, I'm safe, sometimes that can be enough, you know, because this stuff is hard. It really is. And there's some brilliant questions in there. And I know, and I'm looking at the clock, Cillian, and I'd say,
we'll have to go on for another hour, Mike.
it's
It's
really
loads of
interesting.
questions. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thanks for that, Mike. That's really good information. I'm just going to read out some of the comments and some of the questions. I might delve into some of them as well. So there's a person saying Miffy's rest and digest is so helpful because a strong psychological relationship with our bed supports their relaxation and ultimately better sleep. There's more. There was a question I wanted to come around to actually. It's around menopause. So there's a question here, and I know I got a question in on an email previous to this as well over the last couple of days around the impacts of menopause around sleep and sleeping patterns. So I don't know, does anyone want to come in on that even around menopause?
I'm happy to, if that's okay.
Thank you, Miffy.
And any input that the guys have too. But I suppose one of the things from a purely, I suppose, biological point of view, in terms and the physiology of menopause, is that our estrogen begins to decline. And estrogen, all of our hormones interact, right, and support one another. But one of the things that estrogen supports is the production of serotonin. So very often during menopause, women experience, you know, anxiety, let's say, or low mood, that they may never have had those experiences to this degree as they do in menopause. And they start to wonder, you know, are they sort of losing their mind? And you can start to feel, you know, this anxiety and anger and all sorts of things that are bubbling up inside, and it can be quite scary. But that can be the relationship purely between the reduction in estrogen, and therefore it's not supporting the production of serotonin. The other thing about serotonin is it's also a precursor to the production of melatonin. So melatonin is the hormone that supports us to sleep and to get sleepy. So somebody mentioned turkey in the questions, the food, turkey. Why do we all fall asleep after our Christmas dinner? Because turkey has tryptophan, which is a soporific, which means it makes you sleepy. And so does lettuce, which is why Benjamin Bunny fell asleep in the garden and the what's the gardener called, or the farmer called? Anyway, that's why Benjamin Bunny got caught, or Peter Rabbit, some one of them anyway, because he fell asleep eating lettuce because it's soporific. There you go. Useless information of the day, folks. But the point is that all of these imbalances of hormones are what can impact our sleep without us even realizing it. So sometimes it can be, you know, for women, it can be maybe HRT or something. Now, I'm not a clinician and I'm not making recommendations. You go to your GP about this stuff. But, you know, so that can be a really useful place to start. Get your estrogen levels checked, because if they're low, then there's a good chance that so too is your serotonin levels. Now, there's lots of ways you can get your serotonin levels back up, not just for medication. So, right, so you can, you know, exercise and things like that can help boost your mood, because they help raise the serotonin levels. So, you know, it's just things like that that might be useful for people to know and understand, that the physiology is often what's behind it. And sometimes we go on a tangent of blaming ourselves. What could I be doing different? We go on that track of wanting to know how to fix it. How can I fix this? How can I fix this? How can I fix this? And that creates more stress in us. And sometimes we just, by getting some good, solid facts about our health, about the, you know, our levels, our blood levels, our, you know, am I deficient in magnesium? Am I, you know, all of these sort of useful bits of information, and then start building a plan. But basically, and I think it was you, Mike, that sort of mentioned that self-compassion piece, which is so important, and being gentle with ourselves and using that some positive or self-talk, you know, to support ourselves, so that we're not going into our beds at night going, oh, I bet you I'm going to have a bad night's sleep again because I know I had too many coffees today. And then you've got the big stick out baiting yourself about this, you know, which is not a good place to start, you know. So somebody mentioned about the bed, you know, keeping your bed, for associating it with nice, you know, things, the two S's, and you know what they are, sleep and the other thing that we do in our beds. And that's really what our beds are for. You know, so I suppose, yeah, there's lots of other questions in there as well. There's one thing I want to address, and that's the afternoon nap, because sometimes people feel guilty about needing a nap. Now, I know from my own experience of living with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue that the afternoon nap, I am a firm advocate for it. And if it gets you through the day, go for it. But don't go for more than half an hour. Lie down, have a snooze, even if it's just to kind of switch off the mind for a bit, and get up again. It's a power nap, and it can get you through, you know, a busy day. And don't feel guilty about it, because guilt is far worse for you than anything else. Give somebody else a chance.
Yeah, thanks, Miffy. That's brilliant. Does anyone want to come in on the menopause question, the impacts of it, or are we happy to crack on with the other questions? Are we all? Well, yeah, perfect. So, John, I might throw this one to you. Actually, just another question in. It's medication messes around with my sleep, and I sleep more. It helps, but I feel sluggish during the day. I force my way through the day, but it's tough. Any ideas? So I know, Mike, you kind of covered some of that anyway, but John, I might come to you for your thoughts on that, if that's okay. You're just on mute there, John.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mel.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's really common as well. You know, we've come across a lot of people here who be on medication, and you know, medication can affect sleep in different ways. You know, and can cause feelings of you know sedation or drowsiness, you know, during the day. You know, it goes back to the previous point there with Miffy. You know, it is okay, you know, just if you want to take a brief nap, you know, during the day, you know, to maybe help with your energy levels, that's fine as well. Like if it's something that's, I guess, ongoing, you know, that's going on for, you know, weeks, and it might be you know, something that's related to the medication. You know, obviously, I suppose that's something that you know could be discussed, you know, with your doctor, or with the doctor who is prescribing the medication. Because we do see, you know, that you know, the medication can have an impact on people's energy levels, you know. But you know, I suppose we always encourage people, like, you know, just to you know, persist with it, and hopefully your energy levels will kind of start to come back, you know. And but as you know, as the days and kind of weeks go on, but it just, I suppose, it goes back to you know, I suppose what you're doing for yourself as well, kind of during the day, you know, around, you know, we I suppose yeah, like medication, it can be helpful for sleep, but there are many other ways as well that we can support our sleep and support our sleep pattern. And I suppose we would always try to say that I'm not sure, is this the medication that the person is talking about, is it for sleep or is it just general medication as well? But I suppose medication for sleep, I suppose it's fine in the short term, but over a longer period, maybe taking steps in our day-to-day lives to try to, I suppose, manage our sleep ourselves without the need for medication. And it goes back to your lifestyle, your routine, and kind of purposely looking at that and trying to plan ahead your daily routine. Am I getting in adequate amounts of exercise? Do I have time to do that? If not, could I cut back on something else and try to make time for that? Am I in relation to my nutrition, am I getting a good kind of balanced diet? Am I drinking enough water? Do I need to cut back on stimulants? Maybe, as Miffy was saying earlier, do I need to cut back on stimulants like tea and coffee and things like that in the afternoon? And it's just kind of taking a step back and just looking at your own day-to-day routine and lifestyle, and see if there's any kind of positive or kind of healthy changes that one might make. Like, I'm not suggesting you're not trying that all those things already, but can be helpful, to, I suppose, to kind of keep a diary or keep a journal, and kind of tracking your sleep and just tracking your daily routine, and just maybe seeing if there's something new that I could try or something different that I could do, to maybe support my sleep at night. And I understand that, that even if people are sleeping maybe 6, 7, 8 hours, and they're still feeling kind of tired and kind of sleepy, during the day, and are concerned that might be medication related. I suppose it's something that then maybe it has to be kind of discussed, with your doctor, because maybe you might feel that's having an impact on your on your daily functioning, and it's having an impact on where you'd like to be, and it's having an effect on things you'd like to achieve day to day, and and in life in general.
I think that's really good, John. I think, and it kind of ties into, I know what you're saying about being prepared and everything, but there's a question and it might tie in as well. It's like, do you think developing a bedtime ritual might help? We had one as a child which helped, so maybe having one as an adult might help, so preparing ourselves. So again, it kind of ties into like rituals and bedtime things we can do beforehand to prepare ourselves for if we're going to be waking up in the middle of the night as well. So Miffy, go
around that ritual and establishing and creating, because I notice in some of the questions and some of the comments in there is around how, for one person, the trauma they experienced happened at night. So, and if it happened in bed, then even more so, that the bed might feel like an unsafe place. So it's about being able to reframe that for yourself now and create a safe bed and safe space for you to sleep in now, so that you can develop a nice routine and ritual that's soothing, that's safe, that is that you have your power back in. Because obviously if a trauma happened in that space for you as a child or even as an adult, then clearly it's about reclaiming that space for you now with some safety built in. So I think that's a really important thing, and having a sleep hygiene routine, so coming up to bedtime, that you don't have stimulus like your phone, let's say, the scrolling Facebook or whatever before going to sleep, that you have at least a half an hour, and that you have some nice soothing rituals and activities that bring you into that space. And maybe it does involve creating some ritual or ceremony for yourself around creating the safe space, so that you are reframing what bed is about for you and reclaiming it as a safe place, which empowers you then, you know, and that it is a place that you can relax in and rest in, you know.
It's really good, Miffy. Again, creating that nice environment as well to prepare you for a sleep as well during the night. I really like that as well. I'm just going to continue on with some of the questions here because there's a couple to get through. And if anyone wants to chime in as well, feel free. So there's one here. How do you deal with nightmares and terrors? So I don't know, does anyone want to come in? Yeah, John. Thanks a million.
It's something that does come up in our groups as well. I suppose I read a bit on DBT and dialectical behavioral therapy, and part of that is around I suppose sleep, you know, and managing your sleep routine, and you know how it's associated with kind of negative you know, negative emotions and negative thoughts, and one of the things I suppose that they talk about in relation to kind of nightmares or night terrors is that it's really something that can cause somebody to have a really unhealthy relationship with sleep in general, and with going up to sleep, and their anxiety levels can increase, you know, if they're experiencing, you know, regular nightmares or night terrors. And one of the skills that they talk about in the DBT is around actually taking control of that nightmare or that night terror, and actually almost embracing it, because sometimes these can be quite vivid. So the suggestion was to actually write it out, to write out the dream or the nightmare, or the recurrent kind of features in it, and usually these nightmares and night terrors can end almost the same and cause the person to kind of wake up, you know, in a kind of a cold sweat. But you know, by purposely writing it out and actually changing the ending of the nightmare to a more favorable one, and by reading over it prior to going to sleep, and almost reassuring yourself that, okay, if I experience this now tonight, it's okay. It's going to, you know, it's going to result in a more favorable ending for me. It helps to take away the anxiety around the nightmare or the night terror. And it's just a suggestion. It's not something that might work for everyone, but it's something that I suppose they use as a skill in DBT. So it's research based, and it's such, I suppose it can be a technique for, you know, for helping to take away that worry and anxiety around going off to sleep, and it can help people to actually get off to sleep and stay asleep as well. So that's just a suggestion. I don't know if anybody else.
That's fantastic, John. Really, really good technique as well. I really like that. Does anyone want to come in on that? Because we're kind of coming close.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely, Miffy.
It depends on the dream itself, and sometimes it can be helpful to do a little bit of dream analysis, you know, if that's your thing. And it's not for everyone, I know, but your dreams are generally your subconscious trying to give you some kind of insight or a message. And I do remember a time having a really frightening dream where I was actually being stalked by a psychopath, right? And in the dream, everywhere I went, I knew they were there and all of the rest. And the next, I woke up in a sweat and I was terrified and all the rest. And the next day I thought, what was that about, you know? And then I sort of started to piece together. I went into, you know, where was I? Who was there? What were my feelings, you know, throughout all of this? And at the time, is going back quite a few years ago now, I was giving up cigarettes and I was battling with them. And it turned out that this psychopath that was chasing me was actually my addiction, you know, you know, so it can be something like that, you know, that there's something in your subconscious that is kind of emerging, and it can come, it presents itself in a strange way because the subconscious works in imagery. It doesn't work in things that make any sense necessarily in our waking life, you know. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but it can be useful to just sit back and do that kind of looking at it from a different perspective, you know, and what might it mean? What might it be an analogy for or something in your life?
Sure, that's really good information from John and Miffy. So just that reflection piece to figure out the why and the reason behind it as well. So that's brilliant. I'm going to just keep going. There's a couple of comments here as well, Mike. I know you're going to come in there in a second, I think. So there's a comment in here. Also important to note in relation to sleep quality and hygiene, the two most important purchases in your life are a good pair of shoes and a good mattress. So again, that Miffy, that comes back to yourself, maybe the sleep environment. And then there's a comment here. I agree with that, John. That is a helpful tool, the DBT you were talking about earlier on as well. So that's brilliant. And there's a question then, when should you be concerned and request to be tested for sleep apnea? So I don't know, does anyone want to come in on that, Mike, maybe?
Yeah, and I suppose it's like sometimes if you're having thoughts like, should I go to the doctor? Maybe I should see a counselor. Well, you've already answered your question, because if you've had the thought, you need to follow through. And I think it's as simple as that. So again, go to your GP and ask about it, you know, and that's just my own personal belief. If you have the question, that's it, you have your answer. So it's kind of get on with it. Yeah, and go get it done. And I agree with the mattress. Again, out of frustration, the mattress on the bed was only about 5 years old, but I said no, and I went out. I bought another mattress in January when I didn't have the money. So again, it's just that thing of, you know, trying to do it. And again, I suppose the other thing there mentioned as well is how does your partner deal with your lack of sleep? And I suppose that's the one of the challenges, because if you are waking up, well, you can't start trashing around and giving out and kind of turning on all the lights. Well, if I'm awake, everybody's going to be awake. That's just irresponsible behavior. So I suppose, again, if you are going to get up or if you are going to read, make sure that at least if you do, you go to a comfortable, warm space, and maybe where you may just doze off again. You know, even if it's down on a couch, if you don't have it. Most people don't have spare beds, like, you know, so, but, yeah. So anyway, yeah. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks a million, Mike. And there's just a comment in there again, just for Miffy. That's really interesting, Miffy, and it reminds me of the ad for giving up smoking. So what you were talking about a couple of minutes ago as well. So that's brilliant. So we're coming close to the end. I just have a few slides to share on the upcoming events as well. So obviously, we're kind of running short on time, so I might just do a quick, short meditation. It's just a couple of deep breaths, if that's okay with everyone, for people that are still joining us as well. You can join in as well. So again, I'll just guide you through it. You can leave your cameras on, panelists, if you'd like, or turn them off, whichever suits. So I just like the panelists and the attendees just to get comfortable if you're sitting down. And a lot of information has been, I suppose, thrown at you for the last hour. So just take a moment to focus on the anchor of your breath. Focus on the breathing. So focus on the inhale, if it's slow or if it's fast. Now focus on the big exhale out and just release any tension or stress or worry with that breath. Again, we're going to focus on the anchor of the breath again. Just inhale for 3, 2, 1. Pause at the top. And a big exhale out. Do that again in a second. So allow yourself just to stay comfortable, stay calm, present in this moment. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Pause at the top. And a big exhale out. Just notice how you feel after those couple of breaths. Notice if anything has changed, the thoughts have slowed down, or you feel more comfortable, calmer, and relaxed. Now I'll just invite the panelists and those watching just to open your eyes again and come back into the room. So hopefully everyone enjoyed that. I'm just going to start sharing. Mike, you might preload the feedback form there as well if you can into the chat. That'd be great. Just while I get the share up just on the upcoming events. So it's been super discussion, really, really good now. Really enjoyed it. So I'm just going to get this up here. So let me know, give it a thumbs up if you can see it anyway, the slides. So that's the first one. And just, can you see the slides there, Mike and or John? And can you give me a thumbs up if you can see it? Yeah. Yeah, perfect, great. So this is the upcoming events for Midwest AREIS. So this is the March schedule. So we've arranged different events coming up. Let's Talk Resilience. We have the self-care series. At the end of the month, we have, as part of the Limerick Lifelong Learning Festival, the Creativity for Wellbeing Workshop. So there's a week long of events that week. So even check out the Limerick Lifelong Learning Festival website as well for more things that are happening. So that's the online workshops for Midwest AREIS. The face-to-face workshops then, we'll be doing it in Thurles in the Plus campus in County Tipperary. So we have the self-care, building my resilience, and again, the creativity for well-being. So they're face-to-face workshops. So if you're interested in that, it's actually on Eventbrite, so you can book through there as well. So if you're interested in that, it's all on Eventbrite. Then we have the Journaling for Wellbeing workshop. This is a new workshop that's being created as well. So it's a partnership with the National Learning Network. So again, it's going to be in Limerick, and the location is there, the National Learning Network, Church Road, Raheen, Limerick. It's going to be a nice workshop because it kind of gets talking about journaling and the benefits. I know we kind of talked about it a little bit throughout this webinar as well. So again, that's part of the Limerick Lifelong Learning Festival. And then we have in the Hunt Museum, Creativity for Wellbeing. We're back in the Hunt Museum again with this workshop. So that's on the 30th of March, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. So we have part one, we have the workshop, Creativity for Wellbeing. We have a break, and then part two, we have Creativity in Play with Emma King. So that's 1 to 2. So that'd be a lovely one to attend as well. And the booking is all on the Hunt Museum. So just the website is at the end of that poster. But again, you will get these slides in the learner pack that'll be sent out over the coming days. So you'll have all the information if you're interested in more events or everything that's upcoming. So this webinar will be recorded and put on our YouTube channel. It'll be on Anchor FM on the wellness panel, just on the right hand side there. The contact details for myself, Mike, Margaret, my other colleague, and myself are just up on the screen there. And that's information on our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Miffy, I'm going to pass it to you because this is Claire Flynn's detailed as well, the development officer in the Midwest. So if you want to come or just even share some resource or any information on Mental Health Ireland or anything upcoming, that'd be great. So thanks a million.
Thanks, Cillian. Yeah, so I just there's a series of podcasts on our Audio Boom page. So if you search for Mental Health Ireland's podcasts, you'll get them. But there's one particularly on sleep with Dr. Matthew Sadlier. So that might be useful to have a listen to. And just to say that we're also running our second national Hello, How Are You campaign on the 30th of March. So we're inviting everybody to take part and to host an event or get involved in some way with Hello, How Are You? And you can find details of that on our website as well, mentalhealthireland.ie, and there'll be a link there to the Hello, How Are You page. So yeah, thanks a million. Perfect. Thanks a million, Miffy. So we might just wrap up. We're kind of gone a bit over the time, but it's all good because I think the discussion kind of led itself into different corners and it was really, really good. So I'm just going to say thank you to the panelists, Miffy, John, and Mike, and just thank you to everyone attending. And again, this will be recorded, so it will be up on our YouTube channel to catch up on it again. But I'll just pass it to maybe Mike just to say goodbye, and Miffy and John after that then, if that's okay.
Yeah, interesting chat, and again to get the different perspectives. And again, I suppose normally I wouldn't be as honest and open, but I think it's just kind of shared, kind of like, yeah, this is what it's like, this is real, this is where I'm at. And you know, so I suppose always reach out, try different things, even if it's medication or like whatever it looks like. So it's kind of, and I think the piece for me is kind of find a reset, and then you may not have the dependencies if you can just get that reset. You know, so yeah, great conversation. Thanks, Cillian.
Super. Thanks, Mike. John, you might come to yourself just to say goodbye and to wrap up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. It was a really enjoyable discussion now, I must say. Yeah, and thanks very much to everybody, for sending in their questions, things like that. Hopefully, you would have got some useful kind of tips and suggestions, I suppose, from the panel. Yeah, best of luck with promoting and supporting your sleep hygiene in the future. Okay.
Great. Thanks a million, John. Much appreciated. And Miffy, we'll come to yourself then, and then we'll close off. Thanks.
Cheers. Thanks, Cillian. Yeah, I like that. I think the questions were all very really useful for our discussion, actually, and really highlighted just, what is pertinent for people. And like that, no more than John, yeah, I really hope that people got something useful from it. But there's no sort of magic formula, really. We all have our own road to discover what helps for ourselves, and to be open to that. But most importantly, I think, is the practice of self-compassion. No matter what the issue is that we're dealing with, is be kind to yourselves, be gentle with yourselves. If we can be gentle with ourselves, it can be a great starting point to overcoming all sorts of challenges. So yeah, wish you all a good night's sleep.
Brilliant. Lovely way to wrap up, Miffy. Thanks a million. Much appreciated. So we'll see everyone again down the line and maybe another event, and we'll talk to you later on. Thanks a million. See you later.